Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome back to Martian Memorandum, where let's see if I could summarize the plot so far. So, Marshall Alexander, owner of Terraform, his daughter went missing along with the object, the Oracle Stone. The Oracle Stone is apparently an ancient item of power belonging to the Martians. Alexis had taken the Oracle Stone from her father in an attempt to return it back to its original owners. She was tricked by her boyfriend at the time, Rick Logan, who was planning to sell it himself, but she disappeared, and because she disappeared, Rick Logan was murdered. However, Marshall Alexander isn't who he is. He was actually Stanford? From the Stanford expedition, who had come to Mars and killed the colonist who had found the Oracle Stone. However, Ron Bloodworth was one of the survivors of the genocide, or at the very least, he was related to or married to somebody who was killed by Stanford. And so he sought to get his revenge. But apparently Ron Bloodworth was part Navajo or Indian, and that's why he had to cut off Marshall Alexander's ears and write a message in blood. And that's why there was the bloody knife on the scene. But he was actually killed with a broken bottle, although he wasn't actually planning on killing him. The mutilation afterwards was meant to prevent Stanton, not Stanford, his afterlife from being meaningful. However, that means that Alexis is being held somewhere against her will, or at least that's what Deacon says. Yeah. The spiritual leader, the high priestess, Deacon Hawk, says, is being held against her will. So we must leave the temple. Luckily, I don't have to... What the hell was Deacon Hawk talking about? What did she mean my coming was foretold? And that business about the light, only when the light returns. Will she give me information? What kind of light? One thing's for sure, she knows what's going on around here. Which is interesting because, I felt that Deacon Hawk was meant to be more of like a cult leader, rather than actual person of knowledge. Somebody to be trusted, per se. Let us go to the colonists' camp, because that's where I'm supposed to go for some reason. The site where the Martian colonists were massacred by the Stanton expedition is still preserved. I walk slowly by blown-out homes and playgrounds as the wind whistles eerily through the twisted wreckage. Huh. There's some HCl2, some scrap metal. The HCl2 is located near the bucket at the front of the screen. Get it, you'll need it later. Okay. The scrap metal is lying on the ground to the far right of the screen. The tuning fork is found under the scrap metal. Okay. The box is hidden by a piece of scrap metal. Move the metal to the far right. Get what's inside the box. Alright, let's start looking at things, though. A child's sand pail. You move the bucket and find a little girl's beret. HCl2 acid in a glass tube. You carefully take the acid. I would imagine you would want to be especially careful if you're just holding acid in your trench coat. All that remains of a heat-seeking missile which fell short of its target. You move the scrap metal slightly. A child's sandbox. Okay. Huh. A little bit of a darker tone than I expected. The eerie but peaceful resting place of all 228 Martian settlers. Well, considering that the guy who got them killed is now dead, you push the scrap metal aside. The electrosonic fusion power tuning fork designed to fracture bulletproof glass. That seems highly specific. The tail fin of a heat-seeking... okay. It's interesting to see, like, the size of this. Like, this is just part of a missile, and it's practically larger than Tex himself. A slide where the 62 children of the Martian camp once laughed and played. A Martian geodesic dome made of wound graphite fibers. The dome has blast and burn damage from the fragmentation bombs and machine gun fire. The flag of the United Martian Federation, now the presiding authority over this monument. A monument to the original Martian settlers. It reads, "Here 228 souls made a final stand against an overwhelming force. With just a few weapons, the settlers defended their ground. This monument is dedicated to their brave souls and spirits." It kind of makes me wonder what exactly happened, like, to the search for Stanton. Did they just not look for him to try him for his crimes? Alright, let us travel away to Bradley Erickson. Have I talked to him already? Yes, I have. Yeah. But now I need to know about Cooper Bradbury. Cooper is a militant freak who thinks that freaks are the rightful heir to Mars. He's been a friend of mine since I was a kid. If you want to talk to him, try this address in the mutant side of Marinara City. Alright. So, Cooper Bradbury. Bradley Erickson had given me a hot tip on the whereabouts of Cooper Bradbury. Brad Erickson gave me information about Cooper Bradbury. Maybe they should have picked a different name besides... they didn't realize that a Brad was leading me to a Brad. Had told me about an alley in Freaktown, near the radioactive slag heap. Stepping from behind a street lamp, Bradbury is the king of freaks. Radiation had done its job on this guy. His huge concave forehead is covered with the green fungus that grows from the thousands of tiny holes that were left in his head after his hair dropped out. His nose is like a sow's. You could stare straight into his head through it. His eyes are wide-set and mongoloid in appearance. His teeth would look good on a 12-year-old horse if he hadn't been missing the front two. Oh my. I see. That's a face. What can I do for you? Alright, let's start with the top. Marshall Alexander? Word has spread fast on Alexander. We found out he obtained the stone. He's obsessed He's oppressed us for years, making us his servants and breaking promises. He was always able to thwart our plans, and now we know why. Through the Oracle Stone, he could anticipate our movements and read our thoughts. Terraform will soon be ours. We will use its resources to make Mars a cleaner, better world than your Earth. Collier Stanton was a very clever man. He tricked Robert Bloodworth, not Ron Bloodworth, the leader of the early mutant colonists, into allowing them into their settlement. Once inside, they slaughtered these people like dogs. Then they bombed the settlement to make it appear to be an accident. When the truth was found out, he escaped to Earth and just disappeared. Doesn't know anything about that, or that, or that, or that. Oh, hold up. As far as I'm concerned, he's sold out to people like you. The Trans-Martian Shuttle is another Earth-owned business we intend to nationalize. Want to limit the kind of people who come onto his better Mars. Stanton Expedition was a scientific group that came to study the Martian ruins discovered in 2015. The leader was a man named Collier Stanton. Another Outlander. We'll get rid of him and other Earth slime when the time comes. Don't know anything about that. It's too bad there isn't any like flavor text for the things that really don't matter. Like, oh yeah, I saw her in Revenge of the Velociraptors Part 3. She was victim number 2, I think. Don't know anything about that. Marshall Alexander's daughter. I don't have any idea where she is, and we have sources everywhere. Maybe she isn't on Mars anymore. Perhaps she got back to Earth. Ferris is head of the Terraform plant for now. Don't know anything. That Martian stone should be ours, Murphy, and I'm prepared to pay handsomely for it. The first settlers on this planet were outcasts, and Alexander killed people like us for it. We deserve the stone and the right to this planet. Mars is our home. To us, Earth is just a nice place to visit. People like you and the others should go back to Earth. We're prepared to push all the norms off of our world. The stone will help us do that. If you get the stone, you'd better make sure it comes to us, or you won't get off Mars alive. Okay. That's very kind of him. I've got an idea where you'll find Thomas Dangerfield. It's rumored he is building some machine in the caverns near the Terraform power plant, but knowing where he might be is not enough. It seems he's figured out the ancient Martian interlocking mechanism. No one can get into the cavern without a device for the mechanism, but here's the location. Oh. Okay. See, Castro is a cruel, vicious snake. He runs the golden bucket and has bled the people dry, as well as forced competition out. He's a freak, but his mannerisms make him more like your people than ours. He's looking for the stone as well, and will kill anyone who stands in his way. So, he's not exactly that far from... Like, he's criticizing Dick Castro for for being a terrible person, and wanting the stone, and wanting to kill anybody in the way of the stone. But at the same time, he's already threatened my life over the stone as well. So, Rocky Bullwinkle. Rocky's just a big, stupid fool. Deacon Hawk. She may be the only truly decent person on this planet. Deacon Hawk heads a cult that worships the peaceful ways of the long-dead ancient Martian culture. That may be the way of the future, but first there must be a violent revolution. Eesh. Nathan is the son of Robert Bloodworth, the leader of the early colonists on Mars that were slaughtered by the Stanton expedition. Okay, so I screwed it up multiple times. It's Robert, not Ron, and Nathan is the one that killed Stanton, not Robert, because of the death of his father. Okay, it just sent me right back to the beginning. Michelle Bloodworth? Michelle is the wife of Nathan Bloodworth. Absolutely nothing interesting can be said about this person at all. Brad is the mutant son of Marshal Alexander, who was given away because of his deformities. When we take over Terraform on Mars, he will take his rightful place at the head of that company on this planet. Yeah. I lead the rightful heirs to this planet. Mutants were the first settlers of this world. Now we intend to take the planet back from Outlanders. You have no right to be here. Don't know anything about that. Don't know anything about that. Robert Bloodworth led an early mutant colony that discovered the Oracle Stone. I don't normally help Outland scum, but I've been told you're resourceful. I remember my warnings, Murphy. I expect you to sell us the stone if you find it. Alright. Well, for one, let's find a place to save our game at the Aerobics Academy with Jane Mansfield. Before we make our way to this cave, which is just marked cave, hopefully it is not a place that is filled with death. The coordinates for Thomas Dangerfield are near the mouth of a large cavern, about 2 kilometers from the power plant. I enter the opening and find a set of stairs winding down inside the mountain. The stairs seem endless, but eventually I find myself in a narrow corridor. I will save under Alexis because I'm sure I will die. There is a hole and there is a door. So most likely I'm going to have to avoid falling into a hole. But unfortunately, the camera is very far. Like, I criticize Secret of Mana for this as well. Like, text is so far to the right side. Like, it would be nice if, a small hole in the door made to accept an interlock card. A solid metal alloy door. Do I have an interlock card? I do. You insert the card into the slot. Alright, let's save in end 1. Not a good move. The door slams shut behind me. Oh, hello. The young, voluptuous, strikingly beautiful daughter of Marshal Alexander. Alright, let's save an end 2, because I don't know if I have a limited amount of time. In a shaky voice, she responds. Alexis Alexander stands there nervously, staring at me with huge fawn-like eyes. Her hair is the gold of old paintings and is tousled enough, but not too much. Her face is strong but beautiful. She has a full set of curves, which nobody had been able to improve on. She is frightened, but it looked as if she could smile easily. Her eyes are crystal blue and clear. Her mouth is large and sensual. Okay, that's one way to describe somebody. What do you want? Oh, I could just ask you questions. They tell me he's dead. I feel badly because he was my father, but he wasn't a good man. I never knew about my father's past. He was cruel to those around him, but he always was good to me. Then I found out that his real name was Collier Stanton, the man who massacred that colony. I wanted to hurt him. I knew stealing the stone would get back at him. Well, she got him, all right. My father's corporation is nothing more than a bloody sham. It was built on the blood of those my father murdered. So a literal bloody sham. She's not pretending to be British for a second. Collier Stanton and my father were the same person. After the massacre, he returned to Earth and was imprisoned, but escaped after the D-Day attack. He changed his appearance and became Marshal Alexander. He built an empire on the blood of those early Martian settlers. The Oracle Stone gave him a certain power. Also, once again, it seems as though everybody knows that Marshal Alexander is Collier Stanton after I found that out. Everybody knows. It's just common knowledge. Rockwell's a good friend. I could always talk to him when I needed someone. Jacques, okay, he can be a sleazeball, but he's good to me. The guy who, the obnoxious French guy who took the pictures. The woman is a witch. She wants my father's estate. She only married him because of the money. She drinks herself into a coma practically every day. What a lush. Galactic Pictures? They're not exactly MGM, are they? No, they're not. I don't know anything about that. Also, MGM isn't exactly anything that they used to be at the time of the making of this game. I took the shuttle several weeks ago. Don't know anything about that. The Stanton expedition came to this planet to do a feasibility study for mining the pure silicon on the planet. My father was the leader. He found out about the stone and devised a plan to get the stone away from the colonists. Don't know anything about that. I was her roommate for a while, but she got so strung out on drugs I had to leave. Oh wait, now I remember. Sorry. Lowell Percival is the villain in Under a Killing Moon, not Martian Memorandum, if I remember correctly. I've only played Under a Killing Moon once, so... And it's been a little while. That's my excuse. He's a dirty louse. Thomas Dangerfield told me how he used Rick to seduce me and trick me into stealing the Oracle Stone from my father. How could I have been so stupid as to fall for a creep like that? I had no idea stealing the stone from my father would cause such a mess. Don't know anything about that. I worked for Guy occasionally. I had helped pay the rent. She is rich. Is she getting no money from her dad? Rick told... Well, I guess she might have decided to go independent. That way she doesn't have to rely on it, which is respectable. Rick told me about the Oracle Stone my father murdered for. He said it was a rare artifact that must be returned to the families of those who found it. The night I disappeared, I found the combination to the safe and stole the stone. I arranged to meet Rick. He sent me to Mars with it and said he would meet up with me later. But he clearly didn't, because he's dead. He's out of his mind. He says the Oracle Stone will allow him to do and get whatever he wants. He's built some machine and says it will magnify the power of the stone to an incredible level. Thomas Dangerfield. Jane Mansfield? Jane is a good friend. She let me stay at her place for a while. I hung out at his place once in a while. Really? Don't know anything about that. Don't know anything about that. I overheard Dangerfield making plans to get rid of him. To get rid of Nathan Bloodworth, which is, he is dead. He was killed by that mining facility. My stepbrother Bradley has been horribly disfigured through exposure to genetically mutated material. Don't know anything about that. Fedora found out that my father's real name was Stanton. When Fedora tried to blackmail him, my father had him killed. Don't know anything. And have you got a plan to get us out, or did you just stumble in? I just stumbled in. So let us save in 4-1 and see what we can actually look at. We got a rod, button, metal plate, cement door, compartment, and daughter. A handsome antique chair sits against the wall. The screen covers the duct. Does not open. You pry the screen away. A 20 by 24 standard oxygen influx duct screen. Several form-fitting miniskirts, some workout clothes, and a few casual outfits hang by a chromium rod. You drop the clothes to the floor because we want to get the rod. You yank the rod from its setting. For reasons. Tell her about yourself. That might move her to fall asleep. We understand what you're trying to do, but it isn't going to work. A king-sized bed with luxurious comforter. Miss Alexander has been staying in style. A large cement patch has been troweled into the wall. It sounds like I should be using the acid to try something else. Let's see what we got. We got tools. Try something else. A rod. Oh, okay. You pound on the concrete until it is cleared away. A thick metal plate has been recently bolted in place before. Alright, now let's try the acid on the plate. You'll have to get closer. You pour the acid and watch as it eats a hole through the metal. The button controls the electric door. Remove the button just as the sweet smell of gas enters your nose. The light begins to darken, darken, darken. When Alexis and I come to, we find ourselves in a small chamber surrounded by a mesh force field. I can stick my finger through the mesh, but that's about it. A deranged old man comes out of a booth. He walks up to us looking like the cat who swallowed the canary. Hello, Mr. Murphy. I am Dr. Thomas Dangerfield. Allow me to fill you in on the details of my great conspiracy. I am the only member of the Stanton expedition who tried to stop the slaughter of the Martian. For that, I was beaten, tortured, and left for dead. But being a superior intellect, I willed myself to survive. I spent the next 20 years searching for Collier Stanton. 8 years ago, I saw a photo of Marshal Alexander. The eyes were what I recognized. I realized that Stanton had not died in the D-Day attack and had transformed himself into Marshal Alexander. Many times, and in many ways, I tried to get at that fiend, but his security was too tight, too good. But at long last, I devised a plan of genius worthy of my revenge. I hired Rick Logan to seduce Alexander's daughter, Alexis, and convince her to steal the Oracle's stone. Using Johnny Fedora and Nathan Bloodworth, I lured Alexander out his protective web by offering that pathetic fool the hope of getting back the stone. Bloodworth executed Stanton, and with his debt finally paid, I went for the stone. The fool Rick Logan tried to double-cross me and market the stone himself. I left him and his ambitions hanging, but I found Alexis the stone on Mars and had them brought to me. Having studied ancient Martian cultures for years, I was prepared to interpret the stone. I did so completely. The stone had been developed by an ancient and highly sophisticated civilization. The stone acts as a conductor between solid matter and the electromagnetic impulses of the brain. Truly a stone to make dreams come true. It provided that substance or matter for the impulses provided by the brain. Martians created the stone to free themselves from the rigors of technology and labor. Unhappily, humans have only been able to generate enough cerebral energy to make the stone operate on only negligible or dangerous levels, something like a Neanderthal with a laser computer. Preparing myself for the eventual possession of the stone, I constructed a machine to magnify the impulses of my already advanced brain. Imagine the changes that would be wrought with this stone and my machine. Think big, Mr. Murphy. Do not be constrained by the practical. The practical is the refuge of the mediocre. By the way, this is a huge exposition dump. Mr. Murphy, have you ever desired to be a god? To create worlds, to experience utter dominion? Wouldn't you like to be able to control the destinies of peoples, planets, even universes? Mr. Murphy, You are about to witness supreme, omnipotent, absolute power. Alright, so let's save in 5-1. Click help. Control panel, bolts, tube car, stone chamber, daughter. You are going to have to work together to get out of this jam. Talk to here. This is the chamber that holds the stone suspended, which is right over here. The chamber is made of thick glass and can't be broken by striking it. See stone help for more. You had better get the stone out of the chamber before you decide to leave. Get out of your prison, see help on bolt, and see if you can't get the stone from the chamber. This is your means of escape, which is way over there, but you need to get an important object first. You have only a limited amount of time before Thomas Dangerfield destroys you. The bolt is in the roof of the chamber you're in. Get the bolt. Okay. The control... Oh, wait. I have the item that will break glass. That's how I get out of here. The control is located near the ground on the glass chamber. It controls the power... is located near the ground on the glass chamber. It controls the power to the containment system you're in. If you can knock it out, maybe you could get out of your prison. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to first talk to Alexis. I'm thinking.
Think faster.
Try distracting him?
I'll try.
Let's get the bolt. You try to extract the bolt with your fingers, but aren't able to. You clamp onto the bolt with your teeth and slowly turn it free. What a man. Okay. We got the tuning fork. That does not actually do that. Let's go grab the bolt. Huh. Okay. A beautiful, buxom, blonde bombshell appears on the pad. Okay, so what am I actually supposed to do? What does the amulet do? Small containment chamber. The contents are held by a small mesh of lasers. Okay. So I'm not actually encased by glass. Is that Elvis?
Do something, Tex.
I'm out of ideas.
You're asking me?
Well, look around. Is there anything that looks useful in stopping this guy? Everybody expects me to come up with a solution.
No. What a hairball.
In theory, I have the item. I could just kind of look to my left if I wanted to, so I could see. So I can just look at the walkthrough, but I want to see if I'm able to somehow figure out what item it wants me to use. And I don't think I'm going to do it. Oh. Apparently I have to talk to Alexis again.
Do something, Tex.
And I have to say,
Well, think faster.
I'm afraid we're doomed.
Well, some hero you are.
Wait a second, have you got anything with elastic in it?
Yes, I do.
And she gives you her bra. Okay. Jumbo lacy bra. You gingerly take the jumbo bra. Now with the jumbo bra in stow. You place the bolt in the bra, pull it back, and take aim and let it fly. The bolt strikes the lever controlling the cage and shuts it off. But now, let's grab the... Use the tuning fork, maybe? And break through the glass? Nope, not the Allen wrench. Hmm. Okay, this is actually what I was supposed to do. But I clearly clicked the wrong thing. You strike the tuning fork and touch the chamber glass. The glass shatters. You carefully pick up the stone. You grab Alexis and climb into the waiting speeder. If only he bought a door that opens slightly faster, and then the chamber exploded for some reason. Thomas Dangerfield's mad experiment of attempting to harness the stone's power ended his life. Dangerfield was a decent human being once, but was driven insane by his quest for the ultimate power. Alexis and I decide that Deacon Hawk is the only logical choice for the stone. We arrive at the temple where she is waiting for us. She turns and whispers, "You have returned the stone to the mistress of the light. You have surely saved the world from annihilation, but you must continue to be diligent. Mankind may yet prove to be the author of his own demise. Reverence life. Protect the living things and recycle." And now, for the safety of mankind, I must take the stone. Perhaps someday, when the human race is ready, it will be returned. Until then, farewell. Oh, okay.
What was that about?
I don't know, but how about a hot dog and a beer from Weenie World?
Ooh, sounds good to me.
The end. Well, I guess that was Martian Memorandum. A little bit shorter than Mean Streets, although it doesn't have a lot of the padding that Mean Streets had. Like, Mean Streets had the driving sequences, it had the shooting sequences, which weren't necessarily that interesting. And also, Mean Streets kind of had you figure out, okay, like, you had to type out everything, which, it takes time, not to mention you have to be like, okay, what do you type out to every specific person in order to get the information you needed. There's still a little bit about order, like orders of operations, especially with Martian Memorandum. Like, who do you go to first? You get a lot of options of people to go to, and then it's like, which person do you talk to? Like, even that final sequence. You talked to her once in order to figure out, in order to get the distraction. But then you had to talk to her a second time in order to create a different loop, in order to get a different item. The writing seemed, there seemed to be a lot more writing this time around. A lot more story. Some of it gets a little bit cheeseball. Especially when it's describing female characters. that Tex is sexually interested in. Though that definitely gets really campy really fast. And it almost kind of reads on a very pulpish side. And then there's also, there's a pretty large amount of trial and error involved in this game. In regards to, what kills you, where you're supposed to go. Not just where you're supposed to go, but how to avoid death. Like, just that jungle sequence that lead up to Rick Logan had, let's see, you could die by falling into the pit, falling into the quicksand, falling into the other pit, snake, and the quicksand part especially, if I wasn't using a guide, I would have had to essentially repeatedly load the game over and over again until I clicked on the correct order of stones in order to get to the other side. And then the game makes you, again, do the same thing on the way back. But it is interesting on what it does in order to advance the game, bringing Tex Murphy closer to the interactive cinema that it eventually becomes with Under a Killing Moon. It streamlines the detective process. It streamlines the inventory process. Although, you have cash as an inventory item, and you can collect amounts of cash, but it seems as though you never actually need a specific amount at any given point in time. But it streamlines the whole, go to a location, search for stuff. It brings it closer to, say, your, LucasArts style adventure game, rather than what Mean Streets was. I'll probably eventually play Under a Killing Moon on the channel. It's probably not going to be right away, but given enough time, I am sure that I will return to Tex Murphy soon enough. I don't think it's fair to give a game like this a score these days, especially the fact that, well, I probably would have used a guide back then to get me through as well. But I feel like it was good for me to actually finally play the original games that eventually led to the interactive movies that were about my favorite character, Tex Murphy. If you have any suggestions for games to play, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have yourselves a good night.